All right, people, welcome to another day of live Learn from the Pros. I have a very special guest today. My name is Jason Reynolds, otherwise known as Reds, and I am the host of this fantastic program. And welcome to my channel. So, thank you for joining us today. Just a few housekeeping matters before we get our guest on for today. If this is your first time here, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Also, in the description of this video, you will see my website, jasonreynoldsproaudio.com. That way, you can opt in to receive emails. I keep you posted on what is happening on a weekly basis. I send out an email every Sunday night just to kind of give you a heads up of what's going on. Also, I have a audio training website, patreon.com/Jason Reynolds Pro Audio. There are now 3 masterclasses that are uploaded, and you're able to watch those on demand for new subscribers. And if you are already a subscriber and you missed out on some masterclasses, the on-demand classes are posted. We had a fantastic Ableton masterclass yesterday with Drew Keys. So the masterclasses have been great. And also, when you subscribe, it gives you access to our Discord chat, which is where you can ask questions. We have a message board with pros. We've added Drew Keys to that, so he'll be able to answer questions on the masterclass that he taught yesterday. So yeah, 100% definitely check out the Patreon site, patreon.com/Jason Reynolds Pro Audio, as we continue to build community. And we're very excited about what's happening, and a lot of great conversation happening in the Discord chat. So today I have a good friend of mine as my guest, Timothy Hibbert. Let me get him in here in this virtual room studio that we got. Tim, welcome.
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I can't complain.
Good.
Good day to be
Yeah.
alive.
Exactly. Because it could have been otherwise.
Yeah, right.
All right. So yeah, just to tell you guys, well, I'll let Tim in a bit. He'll tell you a little bit about himself. But we've been friends for a very long time, and I'm very happy that Tim could take some time today to be with us so that you guys get a chance to learn from him. I try to bring on people who I know are absolute professionals in the field, and give you guys an opportunity to connect to them. So very, very excited to have Tim on. So Tim, why don't you start by telling people who you are, what you're doing currently? Well, we know what you're doing currently. You're sitting at home like the rest of us, but
Currently, I'm sitting at home trying not to get sick or infected.
yeah. But prior to coronavirus, tell everybody what you were doing and who you are.
So I am Tim Hibbert, and I started out as a drummer, musician, and then I moved into the field of audio when I moved out to LA about maybe 7 years ago now. So I started working for a plethora of artists. Currently, I do monitors for Common, do front of house for Cardi B, and also front of house for Brockhampton. So those are my 3 main artists I work for, and then I do a bunch of other stuff with a couple of people. We just make good music and make it loud and make it sound good.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Oh, by the way, so listen, the reason why I lost my train of thought just now, right, is that I don't think Veer is here yet. I'm sure he's gonna be here to heckle in the comments. But
oh boy!
All right, let me tell you what Veer posted, because you are not on social media. So when I posted yesterday that Tim Hibbert, I have to read this word for word because people have to understand where this is coming from. Veer said in his comments, I'm reading it from Instagram, right? So I get this right.
God, here we go.
He said, "Make sure you put on your shirt and tie to interview such celebrities." He says, "Man like me have to beg for 8 aside K2 when this man walks into the venue and 400 boxes of K1 are hanging in the air." So maybe we should start by telling people the backstory behind that comment, because that is hilarious.
So we were in Houston.
Houston,
and
yeah.
we were in Houston, and I pulled up on y'all, and
Yeah.
you guys were doing Stephen Marley,
Right. We were at the
and
House of Blues.
the
House of
House of
Blues in
Blues,
Houston.
man. It
Yeah.
sounded great too. You guys have killed that show, by the way. So I get in there, and then we are doing our small talk, and they asked me what I'm there for, and I was like, I'm here with Cardi. We're doing the rodeo.
Right.
So of course, Houston Rodeo is like huge venue, and it's
It's
in
in
the
a stadium,
NRG.
right?
It's in the
Yeah.
NRG Stadium, yeah. So the
Right.
place is like absolutely ginormous,
Right.
and yeah, there's something like 400 K1s there, or something like that. Something crazy like that. Like,
Something ridiculous, like ridiculous. Like, I mean, and some of the guys, like some of the guys who watch the show are like from Jamaica and stuff. Like 400 of anything. I mean, listen, it don't even matter where you come from. Like, even if you live in North
yeah,
America,
yeah,
like
400. Anything
400
is a lot.
boxes is
It's a
like
lot.
is
It's a lot.
ridiculous. Like,
Yeah,
so
it's
I started to do the math, right? Like, even if you do like 24 boxes in one hang, bro, you
yeah,
realize how many hangs of PA you
yeah.
have to get to 400
Dude,
boxes?
there was so many hangs, and then the crazy part about it is there's no subs. So trying to mix a show like Cardi show, which is super bass heavy, so they just had the extensions on there. So
Right,
trying to get that low 30 was a challenge, but
right,
it happened, and in sound check it was the weirdest because the room is empty and it's just us in this huge stadium, and I'm just you're way up mixing in the rafter somewhere.
right,
And so all I did was I'm like, turn everything off, and I just want these two main hangs that are pointing at me. That's it. You turn
right.
everything else on, and you have this delay, you have this swirl around the
Yeah,
room. It was, it
yeah,
was, it
yeah.
was probably the nuttiest thing. But then to make it even crazier, it's like we had a DB limit. It's like we couldn't go over like 87 or something like that. It was
What?
like
With
90. It was like
400
90. It
boxes?
was like it was like 90 something that we couldn't go over that.
That's
So it's
ridiculous. Hey, you know
and
what?
75,000 people.
Listen,
75,000 people. I'm like,
I would like to be a fly on the wall in these conversations. Like, first of all,
oh man.
I would like to hear the conversation of where to put front house, because that is
I mean,
like, I think I like interesting conversations, like
yeah,
somebody going, all right guys, so we have 400 boxes of PA.
right.
Right?
Yeah,
And we, first of all, we got to figure out where to put it all, and then
right.
we got to figure out where we're going to mix from.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because at
Yeah.
the same time too, like the rodeo, I think my mic might be a bit hot, so let me turn it down a little bit. But yeah, like the rodeo is the main event. Like, it's not even like you're not there for a concert, so it's
You're the
like
side stage.
you're the sideshow.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
mean, Cardi
Yeah.
B, one of the biggest artists on the planet, is like the side attraction.
Yo,
It's
it
ridiculous.
was it was crazy. I mean, but the craziest thing about that whole thing is what I learned about even mixing in that room. Even though you had all those boxes, you had to mix with a lot of control because um, if you allowed that to get away from you, the room would fight against you.
Right,
Then you'd
right,
lose. So
right,
I had to really, really pull back a lot. So my master bus compressor was my best friend
right.
on that gig, and it was fun, but it was definitely challenging. Like I definitely worked the whole time. You know,
That is
um,
hilarious.
yeah, it
Four
was funny. So
hundred, four
thanks, Veer.
hundred. I know 400 boxes is like, it's ridiculous. So
Yeah,
take me back to the beginning.
hmm
Like the start of your musical journey, if you will.
yeah,
Um, how did you get started? I know you said, well, I know you're a drummer because we're friends.
yeah,
It's hard. It's funny, because people always say, "Oh, it must be easy when you interview people that you know." It's actually harder because I know the answers to all the questions already. So it's kind of like,
right,
it seems to me like a stupid question, but
yeah,
obviously.
right.
Obviously, there's people who want to know. So take me back to the beginning. Like, how did you get started in music?
Okay. Well, I grew up in the church. My father is pastor. My brother became pastor, and so at a young age, when your father's a pastor, there's no personnel. So you are the personnel. The family is the personnel. So my brother was a keyboard player of the church, and so I became the drummer of the church by default.
Right.
And started there, and then my brother started doing his own stuff, music and stuff like that, and we started traveling. and so I was a drummer for that,
Yeah, and that's
and
how we
branched
met.
out.
That's how we
That's how
met
we met.
in
We
person.
met
Actually,
in
we were
person.
friends. Yeah, we were friends
Yeah,
like
yeah.
before, but in person
Yep.
we met. I think what was the year? I want to say the year was 2005 or 2006
Oh,
when you guys came to my church to do music for one
mm-hmm.
of our youth conventions. So
Yeah.
I'll
Yep.
never forget
Yep.
that. Yeah,
Yep. Yep. We went
that
up
was the
there
first
to
time we met in person.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And that's where I was playing and everything like that. And I really had a um didn't have much of an interest in sound. It's like I know how to do it. Of course, being the drummer of the church, you had to do everything else. So I set up the sound system and set up the audio and then try to run everything. And I remember on Sundays I would play drums and then I have my pad doing Ableton stuff. So we'd be, playing our
Right.
stems and it's just me and my brother. So and then we added other cat people to the church to help us out. But for the most part, it was me doing everything.
Right.
Then we slowly moved into doing studio work.
Right.
So we built a
And
little studio.
and where was this? Where in the world? Just for people watching.
New York, with New York. So we're in New York, in a town called Newburgh. So it's like 60 miles north of the city.
Okay.
Um, Small town, and we had a lot going on. It was fun.
Right.
Um, and so yeah, it was playing drums and going around playing for other people and doing some stuff. And then 7 years ago, so 2012 or 2013, somewhere around there, I decided to move to LA.
Right.
So I moved out to LA, came out here and realized that, well, I'd have to start from scratch because you become a really small fish in a really large pond.
Right. Right.
It's a
Right.
lot. There's a
Right.
lot of big cats out here.
Right.
So you got to pay your dues and stuff like that. So I started doing that. I was playing at churches for $100 a Sunday.
Right. No,
Um,
before we jump to
yes,
LA, because
yes. Go back home.
there's
Yeah, man.
something significant that stands out in my memory when I think of you as a drummer, and that
Mm-hmm.
is Verizon How Sweet the Sound. So
Oh yeah, I remember that.
see, yes, that's.
Yeah.
I think I might have a career in investigative journalism if this like if for some reason live shows never come back. I can do investigative journalism at some point. But
Yeah.
um now again, because I mean you were living like 8 hours away and we always kept in touch, but
Mm-hmm.
I remember you and Kurt Kanai, who Kurt
Yep.
is a Toronto boy. So
Yep.
and Kurt at the time, I mean I knew Kurt, but like we weren't good friends at the time. And you guys were playing for Atlanta West.
Mm-hmm.
And then the How Sweet the Sound finals was in Detroit at the Joe Louis
Mm-hmm.
Arena. So we
Yep.
were like, yo, me and my brother Nevin knew Kurt well, so we are like, well, we should make the trip. Like it's only 4 hours. I have a story to
Uh-huh.
tell you about that day too, by the way. But
Nice.
but
Nice.
yeah, I used so at the time I was driving like this VW Beetle, a diesel one, right? Like a small
Oh
red
yeah.
VW Beetle, right? And
Yes.
we when you cross the bridge into Detroit, right? For those who have never been across that bridge out of Windsor, so not the Sarnia crossing, this is the Windsor crossing now, right? When you cross that bridge, the area of Detroit that you get into is the roughest town. Like I promise you, there is probably nowhere in America that is as rough as that spot, right?
Yo, I'm trying to
But
tell you.
but because the your cell phone service gets you have to switch over to the American tower because you leave in
Mm-hmm.
Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Our GPS stopped working, so we
Oh
didn't.
god.
This is my first time in Detroit, so this is like 8 years ago or something like that, right? So I don't know nothing about Detroit, right? So we pull over onto a side street
There you go.
and stop to figure out the GPS and
Yeah.
immediately realize that
Yeah.
we have made the biggest mistake of our lives.
There you go.
Cause some dudes start coming out of like cracks in the wall. It was intense,
Yeah.
bro. So
Yeah.
yeah, tell me about How Sweet the Sound. Let's talk about a little bit about that
How
experience.
sweet the sound. It was funny. I got that gig. And I met Kurt by just someone literally recommending me to they gave up the gig. They were supposed to be playing it first and they figured that it wasn't gonna be anything. So then they just they were like, okay, cool. They just see, and I only recommend this guy, and it turned out to be a mistake on their part. But
Right.
um,
Right. Right.
yeah, I went down to Atlanta and I started playing. That's when I met Kurt, and we had fun, man. That was a good experience. Went up to Detroit. We did that was the first year we did it,
Right.
and I think we won that year.
Wasn't that
And
the
then
first year of the whole How Sweet the Sound thing? That
that was
was
the first
like,
year of the whole Sweet Sound.
yeah,
Yep, yep, yeah, yeah. So the first show we did was in Atlanta. We won the Atlanta one. Then we went on to Detroit. Won in Detroit.
yeah.
That was a cool show.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and for those who don't understand the concept, is basically church choirs from all over well, they had two segments. They had like a small chorale and then a big
yep,
choir
yep,
part of the competition, and then they would have all these different ones around the country, and then the finals was in Detroit, and it was
yep.
yeah, you guys won, which was pretty cool. Like
Yeah.
we were there like. So all the guests were like sitting in this one area. So all the guests from like the other churches and stuff, and we're like,
Yep.
yo,
Yeah.
I tend to be fairly competitive. So I was like, yo, my friends are winning. I'm like, I'm gonna make them. And we were trash talking at like a church choir competition. They're probably like, who are these dudes?
That was great though, man. It was like I'm telling you, man, that was like that became like that really became a thing, man. It was really fun, but then it was like you really had to play because there was people that were coming there. They're going for blood there, man. You're
Yeah,
like,
man. Yeah,
okay,
I think
so
Noel
we had to go
Jones's
for it.
choir was there
Yeah,
that
yeah.
year. Yeah,
We
from
went up
LA.
against Earl Jones. It was not fair. And
And I
then it's
mean,
like you know,
yeah, the people playing for that, I think Gerald Hibbert
Gerald,
was
yeah,
playing for.
Gerald Haddon
Yeah,
was there.
Gerald
And it's
Haddon.
like
Sorry, yeah,
Detroit's home.
yeah.
So
I
it's
was
like,
like, yo, this is crazy. So when they announced you guys as the winners, we were like, yeah,
yeah, that was fun. It was
that was
definitely
dope.
fun.
Was that your
Yeah.
first time like playing like that size of crowd like in an arena? Because I think it was pretty
No.
much sold out. Like it was pretty
Yeah, it was
packed.
sold out. No, I did some other stuff. I would. I mean, my first big, huge crowd was like when I was 7 or 8, when we did the UPC General Conference in Salt
Oh,
Lake City.
nice. Right.
So I remember doing that, and I was like walking up there, and you see all these people, and I was like, "Whoa, that was cool." But
Yeah,
you know,
that's
yeah, how
cool,
sweet the
man.
sound was fun. That was definitely
That's
a
nice.
experience. So
So take me to LA now. Like you're
okay.
and you're a full time musician at that point. Like this is all you do at that point when you move to
this
LA.
is this is all I do is doing music and doing some stuff in the studio. I moved to LA and well, I moved to LA and I had like $1,000 in my pocket and two suitcases, my snare drum, a stick bag,
Nice.
and my machine. Um, and Yeah, that was it. That was all I had. And I got here and I was like, okay, I'm gonna stay in a couple hotels and then try to figure my way out from there. And then I realized that $1,000 in LA doesn't take you very far.
Oh, hey,
so,
it
so
don't, it don't, bro.
no, man, it was intense, man. There's a couple of nights that I slept on park benches, man.
That's crazy.
I came out here and then, I remember being in the middle of Inglewood on a park bench right off Manchester, man. I'm just sitting out here and it was cold. I didn't realize how cold it gets at night out here in LA. It gets
Right,
cold.
right.
And but thank God for some really good friends that helped me out. And one of my they brought me in and helped me out. I stayed there for a couple months and then I started filling in and my buddy told me, he says, "Look, man, I can't get you drum gigs, but I can get you some sound gigs. I know you can do some sound stuff." So I said, "All right, cool. Of course, I know a little bit," and started from there. And I think the biggest thing for me is that I was always hungry.
Right.
Learning for me is never a problem. I don't care who you are, or I don't care what I have to do. I'm gonna ask you questions. If I don't know something, I'm asking.
Right.
And so I began to just sit down and learn and, meet a couple of guys and I would get up and go to center stage and just sit there all day and just, who's here today and try to figure out who's there and then pick their brain and learn people and network. And of course, really study my craft. So I went from doing that.
Stick up in. So I want you
Yes.
to talk about the center staging experience because I've always felt. You see, one thing I've never been afraid of is hard work and the
Right.
grind. Right, me
Hmm.
personally, I know you're the same, and I've always wished that in Toronto or in this area we had something like center staging to be able to go and just be there and just be in the midst of the top people in the industry, and
Right.
because opportunities present themselves when you're in
Right.
that space, right?
Right.
But I always said that knowing what that involved, knowing what that entailed, and I understood very clearly from early that that involved you going there and sitting down for free,
Yeah. Oh
just
yeah.
to be able to get an opportunity. But for those watching who don't understand what center staging is and what that means, talk to them a little bit about what's involved in that. Like what
Okay.
when you say and just going to center staging, um, it's sitting around like just being in that place in the
Yeah.
right place essentially.
Yeah. Center staging is a rehearsal studio, but it's world known. I mean, if you're watching anybody's documentary videos or rehearsal videos, especially the Michael Jackson,
Michael Jackson, this is it.
this
Yep.
is it tour. That's very famous for that. A lot of other studios, Justin Bieber stuff. You'll see there's center staging a lot, and it's where everybody rehearses. Everybody comes there. All the artists come to rehearse. Um, so at any point in time, you'll have world class engineers or world class musicians, artists, big artists, and uh, so a lot of times if you get to know the engineers and stuff like that, they'll say, hey, I'm in town, come up to rehearsal. You get to sit in rehearsal, usually until the artist comes and you got to go. But most of the times it's the band rehearsing, and so you can sit in there and just really glean and see how a professional rehearsal is run. A lot of people don't even know how a professional rehearsal is run. A
Right.
lot of us come from church backgrounds where you have the choir and everybody's dragging in and you're practicing rather than rehearsing. A
Right.
lot of these cats already know their stuff, so they're walking in there knowing their stuff and are just putting the pieces together and putting the show together. You watch the MD work, you watch them create parts, and um, so as an engineer in rehearsal, you're not just sitting down. You're actually taking the time to build, especially if you're doing tour rehearsal. You're building mixes. You're building your the show. You're creating your snapshots. You're creating your how the show is running, and most of the times, the monitor engineer is in the room with the band and the artist, and then off to the side you have the front of house engineer who's in his room by himself, and he's pretty much like the setup like you have,
Right.
and you're sitting in there and you're kind of working through it, and you're working a 8-10 hour day of rehearsal,
Right.
and so as a young engineer coming in, most of the times I would try to find out who was there, and if I knew the people who was there, I would go there and try to get in, try to sit down, and just be a fly on the wall. Pretty much. Sometimes you don't even get to ask questions; you just sit there and watch. And when they're
Right.
taking a break, you kind of ask your questions and you walk around. But the cool thing about center staging is that they're also a rehearsal, not a rental studio.
Right.
So they have like tons of musical equipment, and then there is the headquarters are there for a lot of the companies. Roland is there, Vic Firth is
Right.
there, Zildjian is
Right.
there, JH Audio is there.
Right. That's where their
So
LA office is. Yeah.
that's their LA office. So you get to
Right.
go in there and you get to actually talk to the reps for these companies.
Shout out to Thomas Reed.
Shout out to Thomas Reed. What up, bro? And so you get in there and you're able to develop relationships, which is I think is a huge thing in this industry. A lot
Right.
of people don't understand that more than what you know, it's who you know and it's how you develop a relationship.
Right.
Um, and it
Absolutely.
helps you as a person, and it also helps your artist because if I'm dealing with something, if I'm on the road and I'm dealing and my artist's ears go down, it helps to have Thomas Reed's personal cell phone number, where you could just pick up the phone and say, "Hey T, this, that,
Yeah.
and the other," and he's like, "I got you, man. I got you. I'll
Yeah.
send it out
And
to you. I got you, T."
it's funny. Yeah, relationships is so like that's a gem for people watching, man. Building relationships is everything. Like
Yeah,
Thomas is well, Thomas texts me all the time just to say what up, just to see how I'm
yeah,
doing.
yeah.
But what's funny is I tell people this all the time. I actually met Thomas and became a JH Audio artist before I had an artist. So before I was
Yeah.
working with Shaggy, Thomas and I met through a friend of mine, Omatali, who does front of house for Sean Paul, and
Yep.
we've had Shaggy's ears go down on the road, and next
Mm-hmm.
day we've had a
Yep.
new pair made like one day turnaround and
Mm-hmm.
sent to us the day after.
Mm-hmm.
I've had when I ordered Stephen Marley's in ear because when we switched to in ears in 2018, he wanted to try it out first before he like fully committed. So he used some
Mm-hmm.
Shure SE215s. When he decided that he was ready to make the jump to in ears fully, one day
Yeah. Oh yeah.
like they called me, so I called them the evening before our Minnesota show, and we had a day off the next day before the show. So I called them 2 days before the show, and the evening of the day off, they called me to say that the in-ears just left the shop overnight and will be at the venue when you get there in the morning. So
Yep.
between shows,
Yeah.
like we
Oh
had a
yeah.
full pair of ears made like from
Yeah.
scratch. We ain't
From
talking
scratch. Yeah.
like with
No. Yeah.
sent
Yeah.
impressions. They received it
Yep.
overnight, like crazy. So when you have people
Yep.
like Thomas and by extension now the guys like TJ and Tyler in
Yep.
Orlando, like the support is unreal. And so when
This
people
is
ask me why I use JH, it's for that reason. Like
yeah.
it's that support. Like you know what I mean?
It's a support and the quality of consistency over time.
Right,
Which I always say, it's easy. I mean, anybody can get ears, anybody can get free ears. I mean, it's
right,
everybody builds ears, but it's the quality, it's the consistency of quality over a period of time, which
right.
for me as a touring engineer, that's what's if I know that I'm gonna go out there, I'll get at least four pairs made for my artists, and then we go
Right.
out, and that's it. So yeah, that's pretty much what center staging is. And if you're fortunate enough to be out in LA when this thing starts back up, make your way to center staging and try to make uh, connections and know people. So yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely
Am
crucial. And of course there's people who like younger artists, up and coming artists that go in there and don't have
Mm-hmm.
a crew yet, and
Yep.
of
Yep.
course sometimes center staging will provide the gear for their rehearsal,
Mm-hmm.
and you get an opportunity to run that rehearsal as an engineer, and you get
Mm-hmm.
hired because they don't have a
Yep.
crew yet, and they're like, yo, it's funny. I see a comment from Lundy that if only Jamaica had a center staging. The reason why I asked him to bring that up is because I know a lot of people from the islands watch this. I think our artists have not yet. You made a good point about how you run a rehearsal, and I'm privileged to work with like Shaggy and the Marleys, and it's a different level. I think a lot of the artists who are not at that level yet, the reason is because they don't understand stuff like running a proper rehearsal.
Right.
Like when we rehearse with the Marleys, even with Shaggy, like it's full gear. Like everything is
Yeah.
mic'd up. Everything is like we got a console in the room. Like everybody is on their ears. It's not just let's just get together and
Yeah.
rehearse. But
No.
it's like we're putting a show together. So
It's a show.
I think once the artists that like those artists that are on the come up start to realize that that's the only way someplace like a center staging can happen because artists understand the value of
Yes.
rehearsing properly with
With
a full
full
rig,
production.
full
Full
production,
production. Yeah.
and your crew.
Yeah.
Like I always wonder how artists expect your crew to learn the show if they're not in rehearsals. I
That's
had
100%.
were you gonna learn it
Or
on the
or
show?
or or what I always fight for is I'll get a phone call like for a lot of artists, especially local stuff. They'll call me, "Hey, can you do this show? That's going to be or Coachella. That's always a big thing because it's considered a local show for us since we're here. It's like
Right.
2 hours away or something. But so hey Tim, are you in town for Coachella? Yeah. Well, all right. We're going to be rehearsing at Center Stage, and you go up there, and it's like my first question is, all right. So what are we using? I'm going to need the console that's going to be at Coachella, because a lot of times artists say, well, we'll just use what's in the room. Well, that is not what's going to be there. So I'm going to spend 4 days on a profile, and then I have to take that show, and then I got to go to Coachella and make a new show. That's not going to work.
Right.
So, a lot of artists don't understand that I need to work on the gear that I'm going to be working on when I leave this place.
Right.
And a lot of people don't really want to do that. They just want to cut the rehearsal budget. That's a huge thing for production managers. Rehearsal budget. If we can cut it. Oh, you don't need all those ears. We can get by. No, we need all the ears. We need all
Right.
everything that we're going to use
Right.
on the show. That's what I want to be working out of
Right.
because it's key.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
it's what makes the show way better. If I don't have to go, then I don't have to worry about programming the show, and all I got to do is tuning the room and
Right.
get myself ready, then let's do it. So I think I just lost you.
Having issues with my interface for some reason. Like it's
Oh,
been crazy. But yeah, I explained to people when we go out on the road with Steve and Marley, like that first show sound check is really just a dummy check because
yeah,
those mixes are dialed in. Those mixes are dialed in from long before because we have
yeah,
sometimes 8 to 10 days worth of rehearsals in the rehearsal room with
yep.
full production setup.
That's it.
Front of house and lighting are in the front office. Front of house has reference monitors.
Yep.
Lighting guy has an in-ear mix.
Mm-hmm.
And he's programming with the console. When we get out on the show, like we ain't wasting time when we get to the first venue. Like
No.
that is so crucial to
Yeah.
taking your show to the next level. And I hope everybody who is watching you working with artists take notes. That's important. It's funny. I got a call last year or earlier this year actually. Yeah, earlier this year. No, it was end of last year. Fairly big reggae artists going out on tour, and reggae artists more and more now are starting to carry gear and stuff. So I asked the person who called me the quote on the gear. I asked them, "So when's the rehearsal? Like, when do I need to deliver it by?" They're like, "Oh no, you're
Uh,
just gonna deliver it to the first venue."
oh,
I'm
yeah.
like,
There you go.
"What?
There you go.
Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean deliver it to the first
Yeah.
venue? What if something gets there and doesn't work? Like, what if?"
Listen,
Yeah, I mean, it's
it's
crazy.
it's it's happened. It's happened. Especially, not a lot of people are fortunate to carry gear. It's hard to carry your own gear touring. That requires an extensive budget. But I, as an engineer, I always push for at least carrying the control package. If we can carry control, because most of the times, the musicians are going to be able to carry their drums and to carry their keyboards and carry their basses, and because that's what they need for the show. We as our engineers have to do the same thing. Yeah, your drum set may be pretty up there, but if my console is not right and if my sound ain't right, your drum set that looks really gorgeous is not going to sound good. You know,
Exactly.
so it's always, as an engineer, you have to. I think what you need to learn is, as an engineer, you're an extension of what's happening on the stage. If you're the monitor engineer, you're that other person in the band because you have to be connected to the artist. You have to be connected to the musicians. If you're the front of house engineer, well, you're the fifth or sixth member of that band out there.
Right.
And
Exactly.
if you learn how to communicate to the artist and to the band, you will find longevity in your career.
Right.
And if you can communicate properly, people don't want to let you go
Right.
because it's
Exactly.
it's very hard to find because there's a lot of guys who just come and want to mix and leave,
Right.
but very few people actually really care about the show and the artist,
Right.
and so
And
that's
and
that's
to and
part of it.
just to answer a question, the question is what's the control package? I think when we talk about control package, and we both probably feel the same on this. For me, it's everything except the amps and main speakers. So
100%.
yeah, we're carrying down to every cable that we need.
Yep. Yep.
Essentially, when we walk into a venue, we hand the lines to patch into the main PA.
That's
That's
it.
provided in the venue, but everything on the ground, on the stage, sub snakes, split snake, ear. So it's not just console mics and ears. It's anything that's not PA hanging in a venue.
Anything that's not PAing in the venue, and the reason why we do that is you keep the consistency of the show. That's my biggest thing is consistency.
Absolutely.
You go to some of these venues, and some of these venues, everybody's coming there using the mic cable. So I know that my mic cable worked in rehearsal. I know that all my snakes work in rehearsal. So guess what? I'm bringing that with me on the road,
Right.
and I'm bringing spares just in case. But I know that it's gonna work and it's gonna sound the same.
Right,
So
exactly. And the whole point, like you said, the whole point of that rehearsal period is yes, not just putting the show together, but that's your opportunity to troubleshoot. So if you don't have
yes,
something working, you call up the production company, the gear provider, and say, "Hey, listen, I need a spare this, or I need a replacement this, or whatever."
yep,
The last thing you want to be doing is going into a venue on the day of the show and not having stuff
and
work,
not
right?
having
Like,
what you need. That's it.
yeah,
That's it. I mean, you already
absolutely.
have enough. You already have enough problems. You're tired. You're rolling in. You're probably sometimes you won't even have a sound check because you've been dealing with all kinds of problems and issues. I
Right,
really don't need to be trying to chase down, cables or chase down why this is not working. And some of the times, as a front of house engineer, you're fighting because you have a whole blown stack. Your whole left side is blown. I mean, I've had that so
bro.
many times, man. It's like you hear this side, this right hang is different from this left hang. Oh
Right.
no, it sounds the same. And I'm like, listen to this. This is pink noise. Listen to the difference. Listen
Yeah,
to
we've
10
had.
dB of difference
Oh
on
yeah,
this
we've
thing.
had a lot of that. In fact, we played the Howard Theater once in DC,
Yeah.
and up to like doors were supposed to open at 6. At
Yeah,
six
yeah.
o'clock, the house right side of the PA was still on the ground because
Oh yeah.
it they have a powered Vertec rig, and the third box in the hang the
Oh
third
yeah.
box, the
Oh
amplifier went
yeah.
out, so
Oh
it
yeah.
wasn't passing signal to anything else in
Oh
the
my
array.
God.
Yeah, man. So like
Yeah.
when you have a control package, like we're not worried. It was actually the last show on the tour, but that
Hmm.
same tour that you saw us on, the acoustic
Yeah,
tour,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we actually weren't worried because we are like, yo, we know it sounds good. We know the show sounds
Yeah.
good. It's dialed
Right.
in. Like all
Yeah.
we got to do is line check before we go on stage.
That's
As long as we
that's
have all the lines, we're
that's
good to
it.
go.
That's it.
So
That's it.
you know, even if you
That's
have problems and you don't get a sound check, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, whatever, whatever. And
Yeah.
it's funny. I mean, and that's another part about carrying your own control and knowing your sound. One of our colleagues, Brandon Blackwell. I think you had him on the
Yeah.
show. He
Yeah,
um
Brandon was on.
he doesn't even really run. He doesn't really need to run um uh his rig. He doesn't have to turn anything on. He just runs his thing. He runs it through smart, make sure his traces are right, and then we can go because I know what it sounds like. I
Right.
need your rig to sound like what's coming out of this console. So
Right,
I don't need to
exactly.
be sitting here tweaking everything on my console. I need to make sure your stuff is right. So yeah, it's part
Yeah.
of carrying the control package.
You know, what's funny is that I think Brandon has some unreal faith because I don't trust Smart that much, me personally.
Dude,
I
I don't
do,
I
but
don't
you
know.
know,
I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he does it, and he's mastered it. Like when I tell
yeah,
you the guy has it down
absolutely,
to a complete science, he's mastered. He's a
absolutely,
genius, and I'm
yeah,
like, dude, it scares me to
right,
death. Because I don't know. I mean, I'm just so old school. Like I
yeah,
have to see. I have to hear it coming from my console, and I
right,
got it. I mean,
yeah.
if even if I have to touch a fader, I'm touching this fader to make sure
Yes.
it works.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Be same here, man. Like I gotta hear the PA, bro.
Yeah, I gotta hear
I, I was
and,
like,
and he does it. And he does it well. Like I mean, he was doing Kodak,
yeah,
and I was doing Cardi, and they were opening, and it was the first show, man. And I spent the day because they brought everything, and then my stuff wasn't talking, and I'm like, why is it not talking? And so we're sitting out front of house trying to get everything to work, and by the time we're getting there. I'm feeling bad. I'm like, man, I'm taking up all your time. He's like, it's okay. I only need like 5 minutes, man. And so we got it. And then he just turns on the stuff, smarts it. And he's down. And I'm done. I'm like,
yeah.
you're the man, man.
I
You're the
tell
man.
him,
You got it. You got
yeah, I tell him
it.
that all the time, bro.
You're the man.
I understand the science. Like I know what
Yeah.
he's doing because I know he has
Yeah.
like a target trace and whatever. I get it.
Yeah.
But I just my heart can't take that
It drops.
uncertainty.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Oh my God.
can't.
There's so
I
much.
gotta at
There's
least
so
hear my
much.
kick drum. Like if my kick
Yes.
drum sounds good, like I'm
Yes.
like, yeah, everything
Yeah.
else will be fine. Like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
my kick
Everything.
drum
Yeah. Yeah.
tonally, if my kick drum sounds great, or my lead
Yeah.
vocal or something,
Yeah.
I
If
gotta
I
hear
hear
something.
everything, yeah, that's so true. Yeah, yeah, you ain't lying. You're not
Yeah,
lying.
it's crazy. So take me to like your first big gig now. Now you're in LA, you've been grinding for a while. What was
Okay.
the first call?
Um. So my first call was my roommate, um, Terrence. He's monitor engineer for Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah,
So he
another
had
mutual friend.
another. Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
beast too.
Yeah.
And so he calls me up one day and says, well, actually, my first. Let me see. My first real big gig. Yeah, that was my was Earth, Wind, and Fire, and it was funny because I didn't have ears, and so the the circle that we have out here, they wouldn't really call me for much monitor stuff because I didn't have ears. So I remember when I was able to throw my first set of JHs, and that was my first monitor real gig. I did a couple of stuff at front of house and stuff like that, but it really wasn't that big. I did BJ Chicago Kid for a while, and we toured. We did Jill Scott tour, and I did Jodeci. I did monitors for the Jodeci tour, and that was crazy because we spent 3 weeks in rehearsal, and I was on a Digico, and the production manager says, "Okay, well, we'll have that when we go out," and that wasn't the case. We were out for 3 weeks, and I worked on a different console every day for three
Wow.
weeks.
Wow.
And
Almost like a reggae tour.
oh my gosh! But here was a crazy part. The crazy part was one of the artists was in our tour bus, so every night we would leave the venue and go to the after party, and the crew would sleep while the artist is out, doing his appearances,
Right.
and then we show up to the venue and it was late, and you already know I was in the bus with the crew. It was a crew and the band and the artist. So
Right.
of course we'd show up to the venue super late for loading, and I'd have to build all these mixes. I was building like 12 mixes. And building a mix on a PM5 on a 5D, it's too yeah. So we
I guess
every day I'm
I
in
guess
there.
by the end of the tour you're a master at every console.
Oh man, let me tell you something, man. I'm killing the 5D. You put me on that thing, you see what happens. So yeah, so I mean, that was that. But then my first one was Terrence calls me up and he goes, "Hey man, I need you to fill in for me." And I'm like, "Well, okay." So then I just Earth, Wind, and Fire. Okay, and so my first monitor gig was Earth, Wind, and Fire, and I pull up and I'm on the SD7. This is what he's working on.
Right.
And so I get to the venue and I load my stuff up, and we're working and we're getting through it, and I'm loading things, and uh, I'm never gonna forget. Verdine walks over to me, and this is Earth, Wind, and Fire. Okay,
Right.
so
Right. Right. Right.
Verdine walks over to me and says, he's like, "Hey, how you doing, man?" I'm like, "How you doing, sir?" He's like, "Okay, good. I'm Verdine." I'm like, "Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
we know.
yes,
I know who
yes."
you are.
Yeah, he goes. Yeah, take your time. He said, "Take your time, take as much time as you need." He said, "But we've been doing this for over 40 years, so we don't need this rehearsal. So this is for you. So, but you take your time." So I'm like, "Well, okay."
Okay then. No, no pressure.
No pressure whatsoever. But it
Right.
was fun, man. We got through it, man. We did it, and we got through it. And I got the call back to do some more things with them, and I eventually turned into me doing a small run while Terrence worked with another artist, and then I got the call back to do some front of house stuff. So I went between Mons and front of house for Earth, Wind, and Fire, which was
Nice. Nice.
amazing. And and then a lot of you just being out here in LA and having the friends that you have. One of our another mutual buddy, Chris Lee.
Yeah.
He's always calling. He's always saying, "Hey, what's up, man? Are you busy? You're doing this." And so from then, I've been able to just work with different artists. And another thing, which I would always stress is don't just try to learn the people in your circle. Like I always make it a point to know production managers and tour managers because those are the guys that put the staff together and the crew together.
Right.
And if they know you do a good job, they'll be calling you to work with their artists. And
Right, right,
this
right,
industry is very small. I mean, one if you know one person, you probably know everybody else.
right.
Um, and so, if your name is around as you do good work, you're going to get calls from different production managers and tour managers, and they'll be the
Yeah,
ones that'll give you your jobs
yeah.
and help you out in your career.
And
So,
I would love to add to that to the younger guys. Like, don't be afraid to reach out to somebody and say,
never.
hey, I'm a young engineer. I wanna be doing what you're doing one day. Would love to pick your brain. Would love to, because some of my guys who I mentor, like Jamal and Dav, they reached out to Chris when he was in town, and
Hmm.
even the first time I reached out to him just to introduce myself on Instagram, he's a super nice guy, and all of us, like
Yes,
most of us, are. You know what I mean? Nobody is gonna, and you will come across
you'll
one
get
and
some.
two that are
You'll,
jerks,
you'll
but
get some.
if your goal is really to learn from the best, then what's a few no's? What's a few?
Yeah,
You
right.
meet one and two, but you got to keep pushing. And I mean,
Yeah,
that's such a valuable lesson, because I've always also been one to just reach out, introduce yourself, and
yeah.
offer something. I mean, you know like, for example, I'll offer to buy an engineer a coffee or buy him lunch or something. Like
Hmm.
when I met Kenny the
Lunch
first
always
time.
goes the best way.
Yeah,
Lunch is the
exactly.
best thing.
Like when I met Kenny at Nam, and I was introduced to him by Jeremiah at Adamson, and they said that Jeremiah's like, this is Kenny Kaiser. He's front of house for the Killers. I said, dude, let me buy you a dinner. Let me buy you a few drinks.
Mm,
Let's chat. You know what I'm saying? Like, you
yeah,
can't, if you're willing to do that, and you're willing to, because that's ultimately investing in yourself. Yeah, you're
yes,
buying somebody else dinner, but for that time that you're sitting at dinner, that person is all yours
yes,
to be able to talk to pick their brain,
yep,
to
yep,
learn from. You
yep.
cannot possibly lose if you're willing to take that approach.
No, at all, at all, at all. And you have to. I mean, that's the biggest thing is learning to invest in yourself and your craft. And part of that, like you said, is networking and learning how to network. I mean, people need to learn, also that we're individuals, we're human beings. So not all the time are we going to be, you just can't. If you have my cell phone number, that doesn't necessarily mean you can call me anytime you want to.
Right,
But
right.
but learn how to engage and talk to people. Is always key. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm watching the comments, and yeah, you might come across people who are territorial, but find the ones that aren't.
Yes,
Find the
yes,
ones that are willing to sow into people, and don't have to come out, like, definitely don't come off from the beginning that you're just trying to get something from them. Like,
right,
genuinely
right.
build a relationship,
Yeah,
genuinely,
yeah,
like, want to build a friendship.
yeah,
Like, I think about, like, Phil, like hanging out with Phil in Houston too, which was such
yeah,
a cool
yeah.
experience, and that's Phil Strong for everybody
Oh
watching.
man,
Like, you know what I mean? Like, that dude's mixed everybody. Kanye, Common
legend. He's
was
a
there
legend.
mixing Mariah Carey, and just how accommodating he was. I mean, he came down to the Stephen Marley show. Had no idea he was a big Marley fan. Came down to the show, hung out, and then we went and hung out with him the next night. He
Yep.
was mixing Mariah Carey. Like, these people are normal human beings, man. Like,
Yeah.
you just gotta become good at trying to build relationships, and not just,
Yep.
it becomes pretty obvious if all you want to do is get something from, like, if people hit me up and all they want to do is get a free ticket to a Shaggy show, it's pretty obvious right
It's
away.
pretty obvious. Yeah, I mean, it's quick. I mean, I mean, I've had people, hey man, I'm not gonna be in town, but can you get my wife and her sister? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like, I don't know what, where you're coming from, but you know, but then some people, I mean, if I have a relationship with you and I know you, then yeah,
Yeah,
cool,
different
come.
story, dude.
But
The craziest one for me is, like, especially hometown shows, right? Like,
yeah,
so we were playing. Shaggy was playing the casino in Niagara, and
hmm,
this guy hit me up on Facebook, right? And he's like, "Yo, I know we barely know each other, but
there you go,
he's like,
there you go,
he actually said to me, yo, I'm gonna take a shot. He's
yeah,
like, I was wondering if you could get me two tickets for me and my wife to see Shaggy at the
there you go,
casino.
yeah,
I'm like, first of all, My
I'ma
entire
barely say
family,
no.
you know, my entire family lives an hour and a half away from this
Yeah,
show,
yeah,
bro.
right,
Like
yeah,
even if I was like a super nice guy,
right,
there are at least 40 people ahead of you in the line.
right, yeah,
At the
yeah.
very least.
I'ma barely say no. Okay.
I'm a barely say no. Can't. I can't
Can't do it.
barely.
Sorry,
Can't.
can't do it.
Hey, shout out to my good friend Jake who's watching. Jake is used to be front of house engineer for R. Kelly. Super talented
Oh,
dude
nice,
too.
nice.
So yeah, man. So where were we before we started talking about people who just want to get stuff from me?
Yeah. So we're somewhere. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. We're talking about. I guess we left center staging and
I got it. I know what I want to ask.
we're on a
So
tour.
yeah, we're so you are one of the guys that go between different types of music, meaning you got
Yeah,
some live band stuff, you do stuff with Common and Babyface,
yeah.
which is a live band. Playing on top of playback tracks, of course, which is normal nowadays.
Yeah.
But then you
Hmm.
do like the Cardi B stuff, which is sort of a completely different approach. So
Yes.
so talk to me about the flexibility and the versatility that it takes
Okay.
to be able to handle both those things.
Okay. So mixing a band show as far as versus mixing a track show, mixing a band show, the difference is where the energy is coming from. So when you're mixing a band show, all your energy is coming from the band. Okay, it's coming from that stage. That stage is rumbling. You're at whatever, 95, 100 dBs coming off the stage. So all your it you kind of want to get your core band, you want to get all that stuff right, and you got to learn how to mix that. When you're mixing a track show, all your energy is coming from the Pro Tools box, it's coming from the playback box, and the key is really having someone who understands how to balance your tracks, because
Right.
what you don't want is fluctuations in your tracks.
Right.
And that's with anything. That's even if you have a band show. You don't want one song I'm here and the next song I'm here and I gotta be moving my faders and I'm going up and down. You know, part of part of mixing a band show is being able to get your core right. Then you go from there. You add your colors and all that other stuff. With the track show is the same thing, but you just got to understand where your core is.
Right.
And so with a track show, you kind of spill a little bit bigger. With it's I always like 12 or more channels with a track show because especially come from my Pro Tools because I want control. And I do some things with it like I have my drums, stereo drums, and then I have my stereo TV track. Then I have my stereo background vocals. Then I have my leads, and then I'll just keep going spilling out from there.
Right.
You have also your live programming on top of that. So you'll have the track from the original song, and then you have the MD come over and play on top of that, and then they'll put the band and stuff like that. But I always like to break that out so that I can control those individual parts.
Right.
And so it's just really understanding that type of music. If I'm mixing Babyface, I'm not going to be using a lot of. I'm going to use subs, but it's my kick and my bass are really going to be driving in those subs.
Right.
Everything else, I'm high passing and just kind of creating cleanness. With a Cardi show, well, I need all of 30 and down. you know,
Right. You
because
need those
it's
400K ones
I
to
need
smack you right in the
that's
face
you know what I'm saying? I
at
think my
87
best
dB.
yeah, right.
Smack it around at
Yo, let me
87.
tell you something. Let me tell you something, man. And you know what? You got to make those things smack even when you have a dB limit. That's what people don't understand. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you
you
got to you got
gotta.
to learn where you got to learn what's important. But yeah, mixing her show is really I like to think of it as almost mastering the show as
Right.
opposed to mixing. I'll mix the show. I'll make sure that my engineer, who's my playback engineer for Cardi is absolutely amazing, and he makes sure that those tracks come out that box balanced. It sounds great. So when it comes to my console, I'm just really kind of just mastering. My EQ
Right.
is almost like I'm mastering. I'm compressing, I'm splitting stuff, and then I'm throwing her vocal on top of that, adding it, making it sound like it's part of the show, and then I'm going from there.
Right.
And then I do my transitions and stuff like that after that.
Makes sense. I'm gonna take some questions because we're getting close to the end.
Yeah,
David, I
man.
need you to clarify your question for me. The question reads: what if you rehearse and it comes out good, but the sound you really want isn't really coming out from the boxes provided? Are you talking now when you get to the show? Clarify that for me. But in the meantime, while he's clarifying that, Bo from Houston says, "What made you go with the SE V7 MC1 as your go-to capsule, or rather endorse them?"
Oh, um, that
Because
is a
he didn't,
great capsule.
because he never used the DPA de facto. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
Wow. Wow.
Listen, guys, I told you guys we're good friends. We take jabs at each
Right,
other. It's all good.
right. The SC capsule is a great capsule, because um, so one of my main artists, Common, he um he goes between normal 58, a regular 58, and the SC capsule. The
Right.
reason why I like the SC capsule is because I was able to get the volume that I wanted, and this was doing wedges and stuff. I was able to get the volume that I wanted while he was cupping the mic without getting all that feedback and then getting all that nasty stuff that cupping the mic entails.
Right.
The rear rejection of the SC capsule is great.
Right.
It's really it's a good capsule. It's not as stable as I want it to be. If I'm touring with that SC capsule, I'm carrying like 8 of them.
Right.
Just
Oh
because
yeah.
it's just how it is. I
Yeah,
mean,
like one day, literally one day you'll screw it on to the accent, it just doesn't work.
and
It's like,
it just
but it's a
sounds
hundred
like I don't
bucks,
what
so
yeah,
you
yeah,
can buy
right.
8 for the price of one de
You can
facto.
buy you can right, yeah, there you go. See, but not everybody. And then what people don't understand is it's I don't care what capsule you have. You can have a SC or you can have a de facto. If your mic technique is horrible, I don't care what capsule it is. And so I like that capsule because it just gives me the highest gain before feedback.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, the
So
rejection
it
on it
doesn't
is
yeah.
phenomenal. Like
Yeah.
it
And but it
yeah.
doesn't work for every artist. It's not like you just take it. It's not like a thing you say, hey, or take it. You gotta tailor it to your artist. So
Right.
and they're
So
a great
yeah,
company.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I will say this, even as a DPA master, I do carry. It's a part of my mic toolkit. Like I
Yeah.
own 2 SE capsules.
Hmm.
We when we go out with Shaggy, we carry the SE capsules just in case, because a lot of times we play festivals like Shaggy. Weirdly enough, plays a lot of country festivals that
Right.
has like these long catwalks out into the crowd in
Yep.
front of the
Yep.
PA.
Yep.
A de facto or a M80 in front of a PA is not the greatest
It's
option.
not the
So
greatest. Yeah.
yeah, we carry SEV7 capsules because of that purpose.
Yep.
Yeah, so David is saying when you get to the show. So the key is, and Brandon talked about this a little bit. Every front of house engineer that's talked about this, and we'll get Tim's thoughts on this, is separating your show as an engineer into 2 chunks. The one chunk is your mix, so your mix is
Hmm.
consistent, but then you have to treat your PA as a separate entity, right?
Right.
So that's where now tuning your PA, and that we talked a little bit about Brandon's method of making sure that the PA is going to represent, because the mix on your desk sounds good. So if it's not translating into the PA now when you get to the venue, it's not the mix that's the issue.
Right.
It's the other entity, which is the PA. So
Right.
what's your kind of process as it relates to, now you've been through rehearsals, now your mix is popping, it sounds good. What's your approach to tuning the PA and making sure the PA is going to reproduce what you're putting into it?
Okay. So my process is when I walk into the room, first of all, I'm getting a sense of what the room is. I'm looking at the room, looking at the hangs, seeing what I'm dealing with. Then I'm dealing with the guy who's going to be. If I'm not on a tour and I'm just walking into a venue, I'm making sure that whoever's my system tech actually kind of knows what they're doing a little bit. But then my first thing is I'll turn on my computer and I'm going to play a song. Try to get a song that you know very well, that sounds good everywhere. My song is Sade. I mean, cherish the day. Come on,
I
man.
thought you were gonna say Toto. I will remember.
Toto. Now Toto is Toto. I kind of end with my Toto.
Okay, all
Sade,
right.
man. Boom, 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 boom,
Yeah,
boom,
but
boom,
that
boom,
I
boom,
will
boom,
remember
boom.
the doo doo doo
Yeah,
doo
yeah.
doo doo
See,
doo
I get
doo
that. I get
doo.
that once I get my
Gotcha,
subs locked in and everything locked in, I'll
gotcha,
throw my Toto on. But
gotcha.
I try to my Sade because it gives me everything, and her voice has a great tone to it.
Right.
And there's certain things that like when especially when the guitar goes ranking, it
Uh huh.
it if I don't hear that and I don't hear that right, then I
Right.
know it's the tuning
Right.
of the speakers in the room.
You know another
And so
good
what
one.
I'll
Another good one is Stephen Marley. Break us apart.
That's a great one. That's a
Yeah,
great one.
yeah.
That's a great one. Yeah. I mean, songs that and it's really any song that you know and you like. Now, I would not recommend doing like, uh kind of songs that are done now because they're not I'm not going to say they're not mixed properly. They just don't have the same audience that
Right.
these songs did. When those songs were done, they were mixed for live. Sade, when you
Right.
listen to her stuff,
Right.
it sounds like it does live. So,
Right.
it's always a good thing to do. So I play something that I'm familiar with. And then I'll tune and I'll say, okay, take that out, take that out, take that out. Or add this, add that, or it's something's not right, and then we'll figure that out. Then I'll go to Daft Punk, doing it right for my
Yes.
subs. That sub test, and if that's not pumping, then we got a problem. We got to go and address these subs. And then once that's right with the music that I'm playing, then I'll run stuff from my console. Okay, now I'm ready to hear, and then I can tune. So yes, if your mix sounds good in rehearsal, it's not your console, and it's not your mix. Don't touch your console. Don't touch your mix. A lot of guys make that mistake. They go to a venue and it doesn't sound right, and they just start tweaking everything. That's
Right.
that's not good.
Right.
You don't want to touch that. You want to address the room.
It's funny.
So
I had this argument with a system tech from PRG in Orlando. I was down in
mm,
Orlando with Magic, right? And now I at this point I'd been mixing Magic on a Digico for about 8 months. So
mm-hmm.
I know, like, and I've been all over the
Yeah,
world on it.
yeah,
I'm like, this joint sounds good in India, bro. Like
yeah,
it
yeah.
is
Right.
right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I throw on. I usually use my multitracks to tune if I have that capability. So I had all
yeah.
my stuff, threw on the multitracks of the show, immediately turned to the system tech and was like, "Yo, your subs are out of phase." He's like, "No, it's impossible." I'm like, "Bro, I promise you." The last show I did was in India on the same rig, same
Yeah,
16 aside K2, 24 SB28s. I had to turn the subs down because it was
yeah,
smacking my face off. I'm not hearing it
yeah,
out here. And he's like, nah, man, I checked it. But you see, what a lot of people don't understand is that the pin hot on an SXL is different from a Digico. So
mm-hmm.
when you pin out of an SXL and then you hook up a Digico the next day, which was the case there in Orlando, they had an SXL the night before. Um, my pin out's different. So when it's coming out of me, the subs are actually firing backwards.
A
So
lot of cats got to
so
know that.
So I press the phase button on the. 'Cause sometimes if I don't have like a LM44 or something, I'll send out left, right, sub, and fill. So I press
Mm-hmm.
the phase reverse button on the the sub matrix, and I promise you, the
Oh yeah, took your
black
face
it
off.
was like a sonic boom of low end that came out of the. So
It
yeah,
takes your
it's
face
very
off.
important. It's very important
Yeah.
to be confident in the mix that you have built and understand that. Like
Yes.
Tim says, it's not
Yes.
your mix. It's fix the issue, fix the PA.
Yep.
So the other question, and we'll kind of close with this because we've reached the end. But Landy asks, "What's your technique for drum mics?" What's kind of like your
Um,
go-to drum mic setup?
I'm all day short every day. I'm gonna tell you why. I grew. Yes, I grew. First of all, I grew up with Shure, but um, I don't have to do much. So I think the question should be this: what's your technique on getting the drums to sound good? Because I don't care what mic you have, if the source sounds like crap, it's just gonna be crap amplified.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
my technique is always number one, I'll tune the drums myself if I have to.
Right.
But I try to be friends with the drummer or the drum tech, and I get them to tune the drums as best they can before I mic it. And then when I'm miking the drums, you got to take the drums as a, like if you're miking, if you have a bass, you have the full bass as an instrument. A lot of guys don't mic the drums as an instrument. They say, oh, this is snare, and they split it up. You got to look at the drums as one instrument. So my kick, I'm making sure that there's no phasing issues happening. I put a 91 in and a beta 52. I'm putting that 52 close to the drum head, putting that 91 back a little bit in the middle of the drum. It depends on what snare drum, how my drummer's striking the drums. I sit there and watch them. That's the key. The key is to watch how your drummer plays. If you have a drummer that's really intensely playing, you kind of want to see how he's attacking the drums and where he hits the drums, and then you could put your mics there to get the best sound. I put a 181 if I need to on the top, put a 50 57 on the bottom, you know, um, and then you go from there. So it's really the technique of miking the drums is a dual thing. I don't have like this huge uh, key. Like I'm not. It's making sure the drums actually sound good before I start miking it. That's my
Right.
biggest thing.
And that's a common theme on this on this broadcast on Learn from the Pros is um, clean up the source, make sure the source sounds good, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Tishan, I think Digico it's either pin 2 hot or pin 3 hot on Digico, which is on an XLR. We're speaking specifically about if you're using XLR outputs, right? So it's different if you're going like if you're using Dante or whatever, right? But if you're going into and the P1 processor on the L acoustics is the opposite.
Right.
So sometimes, like if you're going into a P1 directly, it swaps that phase on the which only really is an issue on subs, right? Because once you phase align, if your subs are firing in the opposite direction, you're gonna really notice,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
You'll hear the sub, but you're not gonna feel it, and then you're gonna get a
Right.
lot of back energy onto the stage. So sometimes just by flipping the phase on that sub send, you'll feel it sort of come forward in the mix. I would have to double check just in case anybody who's way smarter than me watches this after and says this guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'd have to check the exact pin difference, but I know I've
Right.
run into that a number of times where when using the XLR output out of a digital, let's say, into stuff like a P1 processor, I've had to flip the phase, and I know Veer has had to do it a few times. And it's not just with digital; it's other consoles it happens with as well. There's a mismatch of which pin is actually hot. May have something to do with the French and the English. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but
Boston
anyway,
Tea Party. I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. There's somebody doesn't like somebody around there. Well, while we disagree on microphones, we actually agree on the consoles that we use. We're both
Yes, we
digital
do.
guys, so
Yes, we are.
yeah,
Yes, we are.
yeah.
Yes, we are.
Anyway, man, thank you so much for joining
Oh
me.
man,
I
appreciate
I
it.
I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's always good to catch up and hang out, even though it's
Yes.
virtually and we can't be in the same room. And we missed each
Right.
other at NAM this year, but it's all good.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
all good.
Yes. Yes. I really appreciate the opportunity, man. This is a good thing too, man, because people need to see this, and I'm glad. I mean, even though we're in this time with what's happening,
Yeah.
there's a lot of information out there that people can glean from, and that when we get back on the jobs,
Yeah.
hopefully everybody's better at
Yeah.
their jobs because you're able to connect like this,
Yeah, exactly.
learn from each other.
You gotta hit up Phil for me and get him to do one of these for
All
me.
day, man, all day.
Yeah.
Me and Phil are, we
Yeah,
definitely
we gotta.
we've been
I
through a
mean,
lot.
me and Phil are friends, but yeah and him are like,
That's my brother, man. That's my brother.
You and Phil are like me and Veer, and me and
Yeah,
Dean is like so.
we've been through a lot, man.
Yeah, but I'm definitely looking forward to obviously to keep doing this for the people who are watching, and I actually want to say to those watching that I really appreciate your support. I really appreciate um, everybody who comes in and is a part of making this what it is, because honestly we do this for the people, you know what I'm saying. It
Yeah, true.
doesn't really matter if nobody watches it, then it's useless, right? So
Right,
thanks everybody for watching, thanks for participating. Join me tomorrow. I have one of Jamaica's finest, Steve Locke, front of house engineer for Third World. He's going to be on tomorrow, so
Oh
make
yeah,
sure
good
you
stuff.
guys tune in and
Big up,
looking forward to
Steve.
it. Yeah. So, all right, guys. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.